this edition of the Masters is it for Verne Lundquist. Uncle Verne.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
He is done.
Oh my.
So at some point this weekend, Jim Nantz will do a goodbye, and it will make some of us cry.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some of the more memorable lines in the history of Masters golf coverage. And as he says goodbye, and he's already said goodbye, to doing college football.
Yeah.
And that was an emotional when CBS, when it was time for Uncle Verne to leave the booth.
Yeah, I was in Tuscaloosa when they did that.
It was sad. Like there were people crying. And I think you'll get teared up, and they'll do it in a super classy way. And Jim Nantz has been a friend of his forever, and so it'll be some funny quips. But will they show after Nantz gets done? Like, will Uncle Verne cry? Like, will Uncle Verne be in the cabin, and Jim Nantz is, saying thank you?
Yeah, I think he will be.
Who is the last, if you guys have ever, the last announcer, either for your team or a national announcer? Ooh, nice shot, Tom Watson.
Tom Watson's got it.
God, that swing still looks perfect.
He knows it too with a smile.
He's going after his ball.
He went to pick the tee up, didn't even see where it needed to drop.
He just kept walking.
Yep.
His caddy doesn't have any clubs.
He's like, all right, what are we, second shot?
His wife, she doesn't have any clubs.
About 180 out?
He's like, screw that. I'm gonna play the rest of the first hole with my driver. But where you got emotional when that announcer signed off for the final time.
Keith Jackson.
Yeah. The first time? Because that's when they did a big deal in 98.
The first time.
Yeah, okay. And he did kind of go I could still probably do the games on the West Coast.
Yeah, I could do a Rose Bowl here and there.
What? They're making a press box? I will go to Lincoln, Nebraska.
But definitely because of growing up watching college football, he was the voice for me.
He's still the voice in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about Keith Jackson, though. It spans generations, even before us, of not just college football too, but as popular and as college football crazy as we are here, I don't know people that are my age and Gary's age and Jimmy. We're all kind of right around that same era. I don't know of a college football voice that was more prominent. I mean, maybe you guys have different ones in mind.
To
me, it was Keith Jackson.
But there was Keith and then everybody else.
But Keith always just seemed like your friend.
Yeah,
that's the other thing too. There are announcers that have been out there for a very long time that don't have that type of charm, don't have that type of connection. To me, Keith Jackson was always that happy grandpa that could give you a tremendous call in a college football game. So for me, Keith Jackson, I didn't cry, but I had the feels. I definitely had the feels for Keith Jackson. Like I will with Verne Lundquist this weekend.
When Vin Scully said goodbye.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
When Vin Scully did his final close, actually, he opened up the broadcast that day. It was on a Sunday, and then he closed. I was really, really sad because Vin Scully I kind of grew up with Vin Scully when he was doing more than just Dodgers baseball.
Game of the week.
He was doing Game of the Week. NBC was doing some football. Will people get emotional when Al Michaels signs off for the final time?
I think so. Yeah.
We don't have as many. The depth of really, really good announcers is large, and we have more options on where we can find them at compared to when we had the Scullys and the Gowdies and the Milo Hamiltons, like we were referring to the other day on Hank Aaron's 50th anniversary back in 74. Those three were calling the game, not together, but they were calling the game all separately on their respective teams or networks. You could rattle off like the legends, bam, bam, bam. Now we don't have as many older announcers that have been around for a long time because we have a lot of young talent and really good talent that is coming up, and we don't have, I don't think, the emotional attachment to announcers. What will be like? Will you get teary-eyed when Al Michaels, who is one of the greatest sports broadcasters in the history of this country, signs off for the final time? And it may be coming soon, maybe a couple more years of the NFL, and then Al is done.
I don't know. I don't know if I'll feel the same type of emotions. And it's crazy because you're right. Some of the iconic calls, you go back to one of probably the greatest sports moments that we'll ever know.
Game 7 of the 05 NBA Finals. I was thinking the same thing. Al Michaels did a great job calling that.
But obviously the Miracle on Ice. But then you think of what was a very scary moment with the earthquake in the Bay City series. And so he's been a part of so much. He's been part of some great football games, great baseball, great basketball. I mean, there's a lot that he's been a part of. But this is where I go back to the Keith Jackson thing. I guess I would say I didn't feel as much of a connection with Al Michaels as I do with Keith Jackson. And maybe part of that, and this is actually...
Think about us, Nick, Saturday at 11 a.m. That was part of it, too.
It was, yeah.
Your kid programming would end, and then Keith Jackson would come on and watch.
Absolutely. And the other part about Keith Jackson is, as he got older, you could tell a little bit. It wasn't as on point as he normally was. He could still get by and give you a damn good game, but he wasn't as on point. Al Michaels, and this is a credit to Al Michaels, I don't think his game has dropped hardly at all, other than some of the dumpster fires that he's had to go through on Thursday Night Football on Amazon, where he's maybe lost a little bit of the steam on the fastball. I blame the game more than anything, but again, I didn't feel as much of the, he's just like your buddy.
See, it might not be national announcers anymore, but local.
Yeah.
Like,
which is a thing, especially
here. after a long time as the TV voice of the Twins, Dick Bremer is not there this year. And I got Corey Provis moved over from radio, and really good guy.
He's good.
Friend of mine, Kyle Atterbury, is doing his first year as a full-time radio guy with the Twins. Justin tweets, as a Cubs fan, the day Pat Hughes hangs it up will bring the seasonal allergies.
I can see that.
One who comes to mind locally, and I think we have some really, really very talented people that do broadcasts in this state, and it's not just Nebraska, Creighton, or Omaha. Small college. We have some really, really good play-by-play talent here. I wish, and I never met him, because by the time I arrived in Nebraska, he had passed away. But of course, I've heard him do numerous games. Anybody remember when Lyle Bremser signed off?
I don't.
Because still to this day, now, Mr. Bremser, and I never met him, but that's what I'll call him, because he was revered, and especially if you go to the radio station a couple streets up from here, I mean, I think of KFAB, I immediately think of Lyle. Mm-hmm. Lyle and Kent and Gary. But so Lyle passed away in 90, so we're looking at 34 years, and people still talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it probably had to be an extremely sad day when he passed away. And he had been off the radio for, what did he leave the radio in the mid 80s? Is that I think 83 was his last year, and then Kent took over in 84. But does anybody remember when Lyle signed off? Because he was, and there were still, you had multiple teams doing Nebraska games on the radio, but Lyle was kind of the one that was attached the most.
Yeah.
If people got really, really sad on his final game,
I don't see how you couldn't. And I knew, kind of like you, I knew him more through reputation and hearing some of the calls after the fact. I heard a lot of the calls during COVID, actually, when we'd re-rack a lot of that, which was really cool. And actually, it was really neat for younger generations to kind of know why people talk about Lyle Bremser and hold him in the high regard he does. I was obviously too young to remember that when he would have signed off, but I can imagine that was because that was pretty consistent, especially in a time when Nebraska football was starting to just absolutely flourish. I got to imagine that was probably pretty emotional for fans.
Now, when Kent signs off, and remember, I mean, I think Kent would like to do one more football game, just one more football game before he retires. But now, as a voice that has been attached to Nebraska basketball for decades, a lot of people's lifetime, when he signs off, it will be, I mean, it'll turn on the faucet for a lot of people, and rightfully so. But I need to ask Paul Jacobson, who, Husker Tapes, he may have Bremser's final game.
They probably do. They have everything.
That would be cool.
I bought stuff from Husker Tapes.
But I'm just curious, like, when he signed off, what the emotions were.
What his emotions were too. I got it.
Well, I think fans
especially.
Remember,
but
games. It wasn't like every week was on TV or on your phone.
Oh,
and that's another part of the attachment to the radio guy, is that was your tie into a team.
It's your Saturday or Sunday buddy.
Here is Eric on the 42 Degree The Source hotline. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, good morning, guys. Hey, I was going to mention Kent, so you guys kind of beat me to the punch. But Gary, you can probably speak to this. Being a Chiefs fan, he's got a long ways to go before he retires. But I think when Mitch calls it a day, I think might have to take a few days, because I don't know about you. He's one of the top 5 Chiefs for me. Even though he's an announcer, he is that organization, and like the Chiefs or not, that man has a talent for the radio calls. So I just was kind of curious.
Yeah, do you remember when Kevin Harlan was the radio voice before Mitch?
Oh yeah. He was good, but I mean, Mitch is he's one of the rare ones out there, and so I'm glad we got him for quite a few more years. But I don't know. That's going to be a rough one when he calls it.
It will be, and I think for him personally, because the Chiefs have become his life.
Yeah, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's retire. A good call, Eric. Thanks for the phone call.
He'll retire the day before he dies in about 120 years. That's Mitch is the Chiefs.
So for me, for the Bears, and I think Jeff Joniak is tremendous.
Wayne Larrivee with the Chiefs, then Kevin Harlan, but then Larrivee went to the Bears.
Yeah, that's right. Larrivee was before Kevin Harlan with the Chiefs, right?
That's a pretty darn good list of three announcers. 40 years.
Not bad.
But like Jeff Joniak on the radio call,
he's really good.
I'll be bummed, but not as much as Tom Hamilton, because you think about the amount of games that you listened on an actual baseball season compared to 16, 17 games, whatever you're getting. It's a daily thing. There are a lot of times that even now, having the ability to watch, I'll have the radio call on. I'll switch over to the radio broadcast as opposed to the TV broadcast. And that's nothing against the Cleveland's TV broadcast team. I like him, but it's Tom Hamilton, man.
What about Denny Matthews?
Oh, totally.
I was just thinking of Denny.
Absolutely.
And hey, I thought Denny was, and he was the OG. I always think he was getting closer, and we're now over 50 years. I think him paired with Jake has kind of revitalized Denny. And hey, man, Royals are fun. Royals right now are having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The Royal fan, when Denny signs off, I mean, you think about it, they've had some legends. I mean, Fred White, Paul Splittorff, but Denny is Denny. Like when Denny Matthews calls his final game, and the Denny Matthews that I've met before doesn't seem like a real sentimental guy.
No, he'll say Jake will have the totals right after this, and then
Jake will announce that. That was Denny's last game.
Yeah, right.
Like I think
I'm already on 435, young Jake. Halfway back to Leawood.
I think the Denny Matthews final game will be very sad.
Agreed. Yeah, I would. That's another voice, and not even being a Royals fan, but the amount of times I've gone to Kauffman Stadium, and on our way in, if we missed first pitch, we're listening to the Royals broadcast. So always hearing Denny Matthews.
It's your time and temperature.
It's an iconic voice as well. It's his. There's no one that sounds like him.
All right, maybe we can speak this into existence. So Adam has a good point here. Nebraska, Colorado, we're playing this fall. Little known fact: Kent on Amon Green's touchdown in the 95 game in Boulder punched me in the jaw.
Oh,
I was spotting, and he drilled me because he was so excited. By the way, that was like everybody that was involved with Nebraska knew what the first play was, and it was going to score.
Yeah.
And so Ken already knew.
Yeah.
And like he tried so hard to keep that a secret on the pregame. But he basically, when they lined up in their formation, he told you what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then it happened. And Kent was so excited. And I was spotting. And he like punched me right in the side. I was like stunned.
They give you a helmet.
And by the way, how cool was that? Because you had Larry, who just recently passed away. Larry Zimmer was on the other side of the wall doing the games for Colorado. But Adam brings up a good point. So I think Kent deep down would like to do just one more Nebraska football game.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
What about Nebraska, Colorado?
Ooh.
Special broadcast.
That's it. It's the broadcast. Him and Damon.
He could say what he really thinks about Colorado, because it's my last one. I'll tell you what I really think.
Him and Damon, they put Sharpie on the sidelines.
He knows the history.
They got Terry Leahy back in the booth.
Terry doing the halftime.
Maybe that breaks these curses that you always talk about.
And just there's one more guy, and I forgot his name. Great voice, Tom Johnson.
Okay, yeah.
Who then went to the Nebraska lottery.
Yeah. Get them all.
I don't know if Tom's still with us.